So, finally sitting down to a wrap-up. Oy. Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today I would like to talk a little bit about this stack of books that I read in June. Finally. Since I read about 10 books last month, I have a bunch to say, but I'm going to really try to keep it short and sweet this time, as opposed to, my 50-minute rants about just a bunch of bullshit. So we're going to try to keep it short and sweet this time, because I'm sorry. First up in this stack of things that I read in June, I would like to talk about Midwinter Murder by Agatha Christie. This is a collection of murder mysteries, obviously, that all take place during winter months, and some in fact are around like Christmas time. This has a couple of Miss Marple mysteries, which are very enjoyable, a few Poirot, which I always love. The last one in particular I enjoyed very much. It is Christmas Adventure, or sometimes known as the Mystery of the Christmas Pudding, I think is what it's also called sometimes. That I think was my favorite out of the entire bunch, but I did enjoy every single one in here. There's also a couple that have to do with Mr. Satterthwaite and Harley Quinn, which was pretty cool. And then there was at least one, I think, mystery that had to do with Tommy and Tuppence. And there was also a Parker Pyne mystery, which I have never read any of the Parker Pyne stories before, so this was my introduction to him. I enjoyed him quite a bit. I'm definitely going to have to seek out more of the books about him, because I wasn't really sure what to expect, but he's a very interesting character. He's not as special to me as Poirot, but I did enjoy him, so I will have to check out more of his at some point. It's just pretty good. I had read a few of these before. I think I've read at least 4 or 5 of them before, but I didn't mind because it was great to revisit them, especially the story called Three Blind Mice, which is actually what the play The Mousetrap is based off of. Loved that this was in here. Overall, I very much enjoyed my time reading this. I think I am probably going to attempt to read this again, maybe in December, when it's winter and feeling like reading cozy mysteries. But yeah, really enjoyed it. I gave this 5 stars. Next up, I finished off the Heroes of Olympus series. I read both the House of Hades and the Blood of Olympus. These are the 4th and 5th book in the series, so I don't want to say too much about it, other than for House of Hades, parts of it take place in the underworld, and I didn't enjoy those sections that much because it was just creeping me out in a very unsettling way. But I did really still love it. I loved getting some of Nico's perspective, which was fantastic. That made me super happy. And I really love Leo. Like, that's what I came away from in this series, is how much I already knew that I loved Nico because he's just an adorable little cinnamon roll and I want to just hug his little goth heart. But Leo was just amazing, and I grew to love him even more over the course of these 2 books. And by this book, I have to say I didn't mind the Roman bits as much anymore. I still don't really like the Romans compared to the Greeks, but the Roman characters that were introduced, I did end up enjoying them a lot more over the course of the story, especially these last 2 books. This I ended up giving 4 stars, and then the Blood of Olympus was just such a great conclusion. I will say that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of Percy in this book, but I know that this is not Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This is the heroes of Olympus. So it's not just about Percy anymore. It's moved beyond into other heroes that are also very important. So I was okay with kind of how it ended. I actually really liked the ending. I saw a lot of complaints on Goodreads about how the series ended. I had no problem with it. I saw where it was going, I think about 3/4 of the way through, and I figured it was going to end the way that it did somehow, and I was correct. But you know what? It brought me joy. And yeah, I don't really care if it was potentially predictable, because I just enjoyed the fuck out of it anyway. So thank you, Uncle Rick, because this was a pretty great series. I don't know if I will fly through these like I do when I reread the Percy Jackson series, because they're just so thin and they're so easy to get through, and there's a lot of shit that happens in here, especially in the 3rd book, that there's some spiders I can't deal. But I definitely can see myself rereading these again. These are so enjoyable, has some real feels, some pretty hilarious moments, and I am pretty sad that this is concluded, basically. I know that there is the Trials of Apollo series that is next, so we get to see some of the same characters again. I'm not sure if we see everybody, but because I know we're going to be following some new people, but it sounds like maybe there'll be glimpses of some of the old characters, so that's nice. And I don't know if any of the other series also have glimpses here and there. So it was a little sad to kind of leave these guys, but at the same time, like I said, I really enjoyed the conclusion of the series, and this was a fun time to go through. I even ended up enjoying Jason by the end of this series. Even if he's not my favorite character, I enjoy him a bit. But yeah, for this one I gave it 5 stars. Then I picked up Magical Herbalism by Scott Cunningham. I have been reading this for a little bit, kind of making my way through it. I enjoyed it. I will say that I didn't enjoy this as much as some of his other books. It was very informative, and I can see this being a pretty good, like, reference guide for things, but the tone of it was far more serious than some of his other works, and while I understand why, because if you do something wrong with the wrong herbs, you could potentially make yourself or somebody else ill or worse, so you do need to be careful. But he seemed very kind of almost gatekeepery in this, which I didn't enjoy, because he was usually so warm and welcoming, and like reading his books feel like you're getting a fun lesson from a really cool teacher, and this one was very much not like that, but I can still see it being a good reference guide at some point. I did end up giving it 4 stars. Next up, I read 2 books in the Anne series. I read book number 4, Anne of Windy Poplars, and book number 5, Anne's House of Dreams. Again, this is part of a series, not Anne of Windy Poplars. Anne is off on her like big adult like teaching job. It is told through normal chapters like the rest of the books, and it's also broken up by letters that she is writing to Gilbert. No, I really enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. I really liked the characters that were introduced. A couple that were really quirky. It's got her shenanigans again, I just, yeah, I immensely enjoyed this. I loved it. I gave this 5 stars. And Anne's House of Dreams was something else though. This one was, I guess, a bit of a disappointment. I didn't enjoy it as much as I had the other books. There's definitely some feels in here, which were fine. There were a couple of other characters introduced that I really did enjoy and came to love over the course of the story, but I still have some mixed feelings about it overall. There are some funny bits, like Gilbert has a pun in here, which is fan-fucking-tastic. I laughed out loud really hard. But there's definitely like a change that has happened here. And I don't know if this is reflecting on the author's life at that point. I know from things I ended up looking up about her that she dealt with, I believe, potentially some depression, and she was also dealing with a loveless marriage, and kind of like, I think she may or may not have wanted to continue writing about Anne because people were so excited about Anne, and so I'm not 100% sure if some of her own personal feelings from what was going on in her life at this point and whether or not she really wanted to continue writing about the same characters. I don't know if that kind of ended up being reflected within her books, but this book definitely has a different tone than some of the others. It's a little more melancholic at times. I mean, it still does have the beautiful descriptions of the island, and there is some of the humor and the sweetness within, but it just overall just seemed very different than some of the others, especially Anne's like House of Dreams. Her dreams have changed so much, and it just seemed like they'd changed so rapidly from the dreams she held as an adult woman in this book to the dream she suddenly had within what sounded like the course of a few months. And it just seemed like it almost felt like it was not quite the same character. Sometimes it felt like there were some glimpses of Anne Shirley, and then other times it felt like she turned into a different person. And I know that's kind of what happens as you get older. You evolve, you change in some ways, you do end up being a little bit different, but it just felt like an almost drastic change in her hopes and dreams overall. And I don't know if it was because of marriage or what, but I can tell you as a married person, like, my hopes and dreams are pretty much virtually the same that they were when I was 22 and fresh out of school. Like, I think they've shifted ever so slightly, but they're pretty much the same because I'm the same person. I'm older, I'm slightly wiser, but marriage doesn't make you an entirely different person. If it does, that's a problem. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I was pretty disappointed in this. I know I posted my TBR video for this month saying that I was reading Anne of Ingleside, and she's like older and has like children and stuff like that, and I'm a little nervous about it. I haven't picked it up yet. I'm thinking about saving it more towards the end of this month because I'm really nervous. I'm really nervous that it's also going to be a disappointment. I'm really nervous that I'm not going to like it like I like this one, and something will have been lost in the beauty of this series, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, to wrap this up, I gave this 3 stars. There was some beauty in here, but overall it was more of a disappointment, I guess. Speaking of disappointments, I guess this was kind of the month for it. I mean, it was some good books and then some other books were not so good. One of these, and I will say, I enjoyed reading it, and I did have a good time, and I did enjoy this book, but I didn't, maybe it's because I'm comparing it to the other books that I've read, but let's talk about Sense and Sensibility. This is by far, right now, not my favorite Jane Austen. I was kind of disappointed, I suppose, with this book. It went on for so freaking long. Like, it almost felt like it didn't have to go on as long as it really did. I did enjoy the characters. I really like Eleanor Dashwood. I enjoy her. I will say that I didn't really like Marianne that well. Over the course of the book, I ended up eventually liking her a little bit more, but for most of it, she just kind of reminded me of Lydia, I guess. Like Lydia Bennet, and Lydia Bennet is one of my least favorite characters. So she just reminded me a lot of that, only more dramatic, and I was very much kind of just over her in general, and she's of course one of the main characters, so she was in here so fucking much. But I really liked Eleanor. I don't know. I just overall was not as good as the other books by Jane Austen that I've read. Some of the quotes in here were pretty good. Like the one on the back is something that Marianne says. It says, "It is not time or opportunity that is to determine intimacy. It is disposition alone. 7 years would be insufficient to make some people acquainted with each other, and 7 days are more than enough for others." That's a pretty good quote, and it's very true. And, you know, there are some good quotes in here. There are some humorous bits in here. There's very interesting stuff going on, but at the same time, I don't know, man. I just didn't enjoy it as much as her other books that I've read, and I just wasn't 100% sold on the couples that ended up together at the end either. Like, I don't want to say much about it in case you've never read it and you want to read it, but I will say that one of the couples I was very much not okay with indeed, because of, and see, if I talk about it, it's going to be a spoiler. I know if I say anything about it, it's going to be a spoiler. So we'll just leave that to the imagination, and if you have read this book, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not okay with one of the couples because of some very specific thing that is going on. Yeah, we're just gonna leave it at that. I ended up giving this 3 stars because I was disappointed. Then I ended up reading a couple of Joan Lowry Nixon mysteries. I made a video a while ago, probably like last summer or something, about when I was purging some books, and I set aside a couple of books that I wasn't sure about. Like, I wasn't 100% sold on whether or not I wanted to get rid of them because it had been so long since I read them. I literally could not remember anything. So I didn't know how I felt about them, whether or not I would indeed be okay getting rid of them, or if I would rather keep them. So I ended up reading these two to see whether or not I would unhaul them this month. As you can see, I didn't unhaul them because I had a good fun time reading them. These both were cheesy as hell. The first one that I picked up was The Weekend Was Murder. When I was rating it on Goodreads, I found that it's actually the second book. I don't think it's a series. I think it's just 2 books with the same characters. Didn't know that before, but this is about a girl who is working at a hotel, and a mystery writer and a troupe of actors are putting on like this murder mystery weekend, but the girl ends up discovering a real dead body, and there's like this whole thing happening. This was great. Like, the characters were so over the fucking top. But it was totally unbelievable. Both of these were totally unbelievable. But I enjoyed every minute of them. They were cheesy good fun. No, I wouldn't call this either of them the greatest things I've ever read. But I was so entertained the entire time. I did figure out who the murderer was before the ending in this one. This one I hadn't. This one is the name of the game was Murder, and this one is about a girl who really wants to be a writer, and she ends up going to, I think it's like an island or something off the coast of California. She goes to visit her great aunt, who is married to this famous novelist who's a real shitbag. He's just kind of blackmailed a whole bunch of famous people to come for dinner, and then he turns up murdered. In both of these, it's like teenagers very much solving mysteries, and everybody seems pretty okay with the teenagers taking on this like supreme detective kind of role, and it's like that wouldn't happen, but I really enjoyed it anyway. I really enjoyed the cheesiness of it, the overtopness of the characters, and there's also like a little bit of supernatural elements in both of these. There's like ghost stuff. I enjoyed them. I gave this 4 stars because this was great, and I ended up giving this 3 stars because I didn't enjoy it as much as the other one, and there was a couple of things with characters in here that I was like, okay, no. But still, great fun, and yeah, cheesy good time. And then the last book I ended up reading was also technically not on my TBR for the month, and also for younger readers, and that was Misty of Chincoteague by Marguerite Henry. I didn't really plan on picking this up, except for when my friend came to visit at the beginning of this month. She had a couple of surprises for us, and one of them she was hinting at, it sounded like it was going to involve horseback riding, and like, I love horses. I think they're beautiful and majestic, and I've very much always kind of been like a horse girl that didn't have access to horses. So as exciting as they are, I'm also very terrified of them because they are so fucking big when you get right up next to them. So I was a little concerned about the potential of there being horseback riding. And indeed, there was horseback riding. So when I was just guessing of what that was going to happen, plus I'll throw up like a picture of me looking awkward as fuck on a horse for you. In preparation of what I assumed was going to be horses, and also for calming myself down and reminding myself that, hey, 7-year-old you would be so fucking jazzed right now, you need to calm down about how big horses are, I decided to reread this. This was fun. I mean, this was such a fun reread. I mean, there's a couple of things in here that I hadn't really noticed at the time because I was a child. They're kind of on the line of problematic. They're not like fully problematic, but they're kind of on the verge of potentially being problematic. But yeah, if you don't know about Misty of Chincoteague, or you don't know anything about Chincoteague, so there are 2 islands off the coast of Maryland and Virginia. Yes, there are 2 islands off the coast of Maryland and Virginia. As you can see here, they are Chincoteague and Assateague. Chincoteague has people on it. Chincoteague is a full, like, place where people live. Assateague is where the wild things live. That is where the ponies are from. Legend has it, and it's discussed in here, that a Spanish galleon that was transporting horses somewhere else crash landed in a storm, and the ponies that were on there ended up on Assateague and continued breeding and eventually made like this ton of wild ponies. And every summer, it is called Pony Penning Day. It happens every year. People from Chincoteague go over to Assateague and they round up the wild ponies and they bring them over to Chincoteague, and it's like this big tourist event. They do like bucking bronco stuff, and basically they check on the state of the ponies. They take the young ones that can potentially be tamed, and they train them, they sell them, and then they put the adult ones back. They kind of drive them back to the island, and it helps with like population control and ensuring that the animals have enough, like it doesn't get overrun, like they have enough to eat still on Assateague, and it's like this whole thing. Anyway, this is kind of about that. It's about that event, and it's also about the time that two young kids ended up capturing the uncatchable horse called the Phantom. She's like this just crazy wild horse that would upset like boats and shit, and they like managed to catch her. It was a good time rereading it. I very much enjoyed it. I may or may not continue on and read a couple of the other books, because I do have Sea Star, Orphan of Chincoteague, and I have Stormy Misty's Foal. I also might read those at some point, or I might just leave it at this because it was just a fun little nostalgic trip to take. But yeah, I had a lot of fun re-experiencing this again, and remembering why I love these books. Marguerite Henry is a great writer of like about horses and animals in general, actually. So yeah, this was fun. Fun little nostalgic trip. I think I gave this like 5 stars. Just had a good time reading it. So that's it. That's all of the books that I read over the course of June. Pretty sizable stack. I'm hoping to also get through a bunch of books this month as well, but we'll see. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on these books, and I hope you guys are having a great reading month, and I will see you in the next video.